Hello, everyone. Good evening. I am Ananya Tiwari, and I work as a Senior Research Associate with the Center for Environmental Health and Center for Chronic Disease Control. I welcome you all to the fourth edition of our Climate Smart Healthcare webinar series. Theme for today's webinar is Waste Management and Statutory Compliance in Indian Hospital Settings. During the webinar session, we will be taking question and answers. So for any comments or queries, you can type in the chat box as well as in the question and answers box. We will also be having an interactive discussion at the end of the webinar. So please, you can type in, or you can just unmute at that time to discuss your queries. So beginning with this webinar, I would like to take the opportunity to first talk briefly about some of our initiatives, that is HELP and GGHH, and why we are conducting these webinar series. So Global Green Healthy Hospitals, that is GGHH, is a global community that brings together hospitals, health systems, and health organizations from across the world under a shared goal of reducing environmental footprint of health sector and contributing to improve public and environmental health. The framework and roadmap to reach this goal is provided by GGHH agenda and its 10 interconnected sustainability goals for hospitals and health systems. GGHH currently has around 1,450 members present in 72 countries, representing the interests of more than 43,000 hospitals and health centers. The 10 sustainability goals of GGHH include leadership to prioritize environmental health, chemicals, that is to substitute harmful chemicals with safer alternatives, waste, where the objective is to reduce waste as much as possible and dispose healthcare waste in the most safe and sustainable manner. The fourth goal is energy, that is to switch to and adopt cleaner and renewable sources of energy, reduce hospital water consumption, improve transportation strategies, purchase and serve sustainably grown food across health systems as well as across the communities. Pharmaceuticals, ninth is building to support green and healthy hospital designs and construction. And the last goal is purchasing, that is to promote buying safer and more sustainable products and materials for healthcare activities. Health and Environment Leadership Platform, which is also known as HELP, it is the India counterpart of GGHH. It was established by Public Health Foundation of India and Center for Chronic Disease Control in partnership with Healthcare Without Harm. It brings together healthcare institutions in India under the shared goal of reducing environmental footprint of health sector, just the way GGHH does. Aims to build capacity of physicians on the health impacts of environmental pollution. And currently it has 73 members representing over 7,700 healthcare institutions and over 27,000 physicians in India. Now, when we talk about climate smart health systems, it is essentially the healthcare system which is working towards reducing healthcare's carbon footprint and developing and adopting strategies that can build climate resilient infrastructure within the healthcare system, because this will not just reduce the carbon footprint of the healthcare sector, but will also improve the patient access to healthcare, especially during the climate calamities. So now why we are talking about these climate smart healthcare webinar series, the idea is to showcase low carbon models of healthcare sector in India, and to showcase sector leaders that have adopted strategies to build resilience against climate threats. Focus of these webinar series is on implementation of initiatives on buildings, energy, transport, waste, water, plastic procurement, and the entire supply chain. To know more about our Climate Smart Healthcare webinar series, you can visit the page at www.ceh.org.in. And to become a HELP member, which is a completely free of cost initiative, you can email us at help.ceh@phfi.org. Now, moving on to the main presentation of today's webinar, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Nishant Jaiswal, who is the General Manager Operations at Nanavati Super Speciality Hospital, Mumbai. Mr. Jaiswal holds a master's degree in hospital administration. He has a work experience of more than 15 years in managing operations division across several leading hospitals in the country. We welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Hello. Hi, good evening to all of you. I'll Can you see the presentation main screen?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So good evening to all of you. I tried to include all the facets of waste management, what we do and what I'm aware of. And as you see this picture, so the great emphasis is laid down today on ESG compliances for all the corporates, especially the corporates who are listed, public companies or invested by the foreign institutional investors. The major criteria of funding today is ESG compliance, which is environmental, societal, and governance compliances. And environmental compliances plays a major role. You can see that we need to save the globe, we need to get on to the renewable energy, and plus the compliance guidelines, rules, acts are in place, which government strictly monitoring and needs the adherence from all the corporates. As far as hospitals are concerned, we are sitting on a bomb. You know, a hospital is the only institution of any such kind of industry which uses biomedical waste, biomedical tissues, which uses more than 400 hazardous chemicals, out of which more than 30% are highly flammable, combustible materials. Hospital is the only institution which uses the radiopharmaceuticals in varied combination, more than 15 to 20, depending upon the type of institution. But we use more than 10 radiopharmaceuticals. Apart from that, large quantities of waste diesel, waste transformer oils, waste xylene, waste formalin, waste STP treated water, which is going into the municipal, large quantity of biomedical equipments which get condemned every year, computers, printers. The variety and the mix of the waste which a hospital generates is enormous. And that is why it is very important for us to at least discard or dispose the waste in a proper way to the respective agencies which are authorized, licensed by the government bodies and by the right method. So I'll first address the biomedical waste management. We all know the rules, acts, all the resource material which is available in government websites everywhere. I will try to touch upon the very basic day-to-day activities, what we do, what we need to monitor for the compliances and how we do it, so that we have an idea as far as the operational compliances is concerned. So the waste in the hospital is categorized into various categories. Number one is biomedical waste. Then we have radioactive waste, hazardous chemical waste, wastewater, e-waste, that is the electronic waste, then disposal of infectious blood and blood body fluids, and plastic waste. What is the definition of biomedical waste? Biomedical waste is defined as any waste which is generated during the diagnosis, treatment, or immunization of human beings or animals or in research activities. I have taken the screenshot of the government website which has listed all the notifications, and the PDF documents are available. Mainly, we follow Biomedical Waste Management Rules 2016 and the various 3 amendments which has happened. These are excluding the COVID guidelines of biomedical waste management, which was issued by CPCB last year and intermittently 4 months back also. These are the various guidelines for biomedical waste which the government issues. It has also defined the biomedical waste toolkits which you can refer, which has the pictorial presentations, process map guidelines of 2016 rules, the way how in-house transportation and storage of biomedical waste can happen, treatment, disposal, and duties of various stakeholders. But these rules are not applicable to radioactive waste, hazardous chemical waste. These are the various acts which are mentioned into the biomedical waste management rules. Why I have mentioned these screenshots and this set of the rules, because we need to know that what are the compliances. So for radioactive waste, we come into the Atomic Energy Act. Then the solid waste, we come into municipal solid waste management and handling rules under various municipal bodies. After that, hazardous waste covered under hazardous waste management, handling, and transboundary movement. So the hospitals are under the purview of hazardous waste. Then the e-waste, waste covered under the e-waste rules 2011, basis which all the licensed biomedical equipment like AERB, like PCP entity controlled. So after the due approval of decommissioning or final condemnation authority inspection of these biomedical equipments, we can identify a MPCB or Pollution Control Board certified vendor, and through that vendor we can hand over these equipments for a methodical disposal at the end. We should not dispose these equipments to any scrap dealer. And after that, the hazardous microorganisms, genetically microorganisms, hazardous rules and acts 1989. So if you see in the biomedical waste rules only, they have defined the rules 2016, which is applicable for BMW compliances. But apart from that, they have excluded these acts under which a hospital falls. And we have to comply with these rules also. So we must have first the biomedical waste committee, and its functions are preparation of a BMW manual, ensure its circulation to each department, conduct various programs by lectures, symposia, rounds, conduct training programs, hold regular meetings so as to formulate a policy, draw action plan for implementation and monitor regularly, record, document minutes of the meeting for submission as a part of annual report. So the minutes of the meeting of biomedical waste committee in a hospital becomes a statutory document, and its compliances and closures are mandatory because you file those as an annexure to the annual report to MPCB, right? And these minutes should be signed by the head infection control officer, which heads the ICC, Infection Control Committee also, and duly submitted to the head of the institution. Now, these are the statutory operational compliances for biomedical waste. So number one, statement of biomedical waste must be generated on a monthly basis and shall be uploaded and displayed on the website of the hospital. This frequency is monthly. Then each biomedical waste bag shall be labeled with a barcode label with weight and then only handed over to the collector vendor, which has to be done daily. Annual report shall be filed before 30th June. This was previous clause. Right now we file before 31st January, once in a year. Monthly accident report form 1 shall be submitted to regional and main MPCB office on a monthly basis. This form should be attached with an annexure which should have a SOP that if a large quantity of biomedical waste spill happens in campus or on road, then what will be your protocol? Because the bags are pre-identified due to barcode labels. MPCB authorized vendor should collect the biomedical waste, and a hospital has a valid agreement in place. So we have 3-year agreement with those vendors. All containers used for storage, collection, transport of biomedical waste shall be labeled with biohazard symbol. It has to be done on a continuous basis. Use of only non-chlorinated plastic bags, gloves, and blood bags should be used. Mandatory training to all healthcare workers with respect to biomedical waste segregation and handling during induction and on duty is a continuous process. Immunization of healthcare worker and their records for HBsAg vaccination is mandatory and continuous. Installation of sewage treatment plant and its online monitoring of parameters and its online display in the MPCB office is a mandatory and a continuous thing. So if any day my software doesn't work or if there is any glitch, then we receive an auto alert from MPCB office that you have not reported the indicators for this particular date. These indicators are what? So on a continuous basis, we report the pH, biological oxygen demand, COD, and the suspended particles readings to the MPCV. And they are aware and they are monitoring our compliances as far as the specified limits which are mentioned in the license to operate to the hospital. Then installation of organic waste converter and its processing is a continuous compliance. Then separate disposal of hazardous waste such as xylene is a monthly process. Every month we do it. And then filing of environment statement for the period, say financial year 1st April to 31st March before 30th September every year is a yearly compliance. So these are the top 13 major compliances and the reportings which needs to be done to the MPCV so that we are fully compliant. This is Schedule 1, category of various biomedical waste with the instructions to the staff of half-used vials should be discarded in yellow color, all cytotoxic disposal materials. So we all are aware about segregation at source, and these are color-coded as per the BMW guidelines. The labels for biohazard, what we use is as per the rules mentioned in 2016, and a separate signage is used for cytotoxic drugs waste, which is in the yellow category. Now, guidelines for non-chlorinated polybags. So what is mentioned in the Act is that every occupier shall phase out use of non-chlorinated polybags within 2 years from the date of publication of these rules. And after 2 years from such publication of these rules, the chlorinated polybag shall not be used for storing, transporting, or biomedical waste. And the occupier or operator of a common biomedical waste treatment facility shall not dispose of such plastic by incineration and the bags, because these chlorinated polybags fumes out CFC, which is carbon chloride fluorocarbons, and which are very bad for the ozone layer. So what note we need to keep into consideration? The supplier who provides biomedical waste polybags shall submit every year test report mentioning the polybags manufactured and supplied are of non-chlorinated in nature. In the purchase order, specifically mention the details of material, gauge, thickness of plastic bag, biodegradable it is, and chlorine free. All polybag used for biomedical waste collection shall have standard labeling format as defined in the rules. So, the guidelines for non-chlorinated polybags, that all the polybags shall be printed with the details which are mentioned into the Act in the annexures. And it should have the labels, barcode label, plus the label at the source in the specific ward where the waste is generated, which will be a manual. This is that information at the central storage facility through the software, a barcoded label will be generated. It must have a biohazard symbol always. It should have the detailed address of the hospital and specifically the contact person name and the number on which, if any theft, if any pilferage, if any major leak or spill happens anywhere, then they can contact or anyone can contact us along with the specific email ID. So these are the very specific guidelines mentioned, and all these details has to be printed in correctness on the polybags. Now, storage and collection of biomedical waste. Please read the conditions in your license in your hospital and provide dedicated separate storage facility for biomedical waste. The storage facilities should have lock and key and should be pest and animal free, such as cats, dogs, or crow. The design of storage facilities such that there should be trolley bay to wash the trolleys. Floor level should be inclined for quick movement of water, crevices free flow, washable floors, and walls with drains. The operator of central biomedical waste treatment facility shall pick up the BMW waste on daily basis. If the waste is not collected beyond 24 hours, then the hospital must report to respective pollution control board office. The doors of the BMW storage facility shall have biohazard symbol and the PPE safety instructions for sanitation worker safety. Collection within the hospital and the labeling. So if you can see the label, this label is pasted on the bag the moment the bag is taken out from the dustbin, which has a ward or a department name, date of generation, shift, and sign of sister in charge or the person or the housekeeping person. So once the biomedical waste is removed from the dustbin, an identification label is pasted on the bag. The central collection team collects the biomedical waste and bring to the storage facility. Referring the unit level label, the details are entered in biomedical waste management software and a barcode label is generated. The weighing scale must be integrated with the BMW software so that the waste recorded on the digital weighing scale can be reflected in the software in non-editable field so that as is weight barcode label can be printed. It must be ensured that option of multiple barcode labels printing shall be restricted for a particular ward. The trolley used for carrying the biomedical waste must be leak-proof and washable and non-corrosive. The plastic bag's ppm thickness gauge should be such that it cannot be easily torn or teared to prevent the leakage while transport. And you can see the barcode label. It has the name or the color code, which is yellow, the weight, the barcode, and the date and the time and the department from which it is generated. And in below, there's a screenshot of the manual, the guidelines for barcode system for both the QR code base and for the barcode base stickers. So a detailed guideline is available on how to implement this process, and it has been widely implemented across India. Disposal of body parts and its consent. So note that in case of amputated limb or unborn fetus, certificate for disposal of abortus to be obtained from the respective medical officer under whom or the consultant under whom the surgery or the procedure is being done. The consent form for disposal of body part is to be obtained. The copy of the above shall be given to the person at the point of collection, the authorized collector of biomedical waste and handover. Special emphasis and check to be paid on the religious sentiment of the relative or the patient if they wish to conduct the religious ceremony of disposal of limb or the fetus through burial or through burn in the crematoriums, right? As per the religious ceremonial processes. The screenshot of the certificate for disposal of abortus is attached. So this is the format which we received from our health officer department from municipality, and this informed that in this format you have to document and submit this format to the biomedical waste collector, and then only he will collect the amputated limb or the deceased. Standards for autoclaving of biomedical waste. So this is the sect that autoclaving should be dedicated for the purpose of disinfecting and treating biomedical waste. So we autoclave red category waste. When operating a gravity flow autoclave, so the temperature shall not be less than 121 and the 15 pounds per square inch, a temperature of not less than 135 or the pressure of 31. So what to maintain? Maintain a register for each load of red waste which has been autoclaved, and after autoclave, weigh it and generate the barcode then. The equipment generated data on cycle performance and the spore testing records must be maintained. The thermal paper report of autoclave must be scanned and kept as a soft copy before the ink fades off. Because in many cases, I have also experienced initially that we stored it as is and the ink fades off. And during the inspection, we could not read the details and the specifics. So that is why the moment we generate, every day we scan it and keep it date-wise in the folder so that we have all the records and we can tally it with the registers. Now you need to do the periodic review of the biomedical waste generated. This is the slide which I made 4-5 months back while analyzing the various kinds of biomedical waste and what is the trend as compared to last year. In your hospital license, there is a specified limit and the quantity of waste which you can generate basis the number of beds. So we need to evaluate regularly, maybe 6 monthly or yearly, that how much waste we have generated. If the waste quantity is beyond the permissible limits as mentioned in the license, then either we need to look out for the highest wards which are generating the waste, check and audit whether the waste segregation at source is correct or not. And if we are confirmed that due to increase in the surgeries or due to increase in the inpatient admissions or the change in the mix of the procedures, the waste generation has increased, then apply for the MPCB to increase the permissible limit so that when we report in the annual report, there should be compliance in accordance with the weight which is mentioned in the license, that as per the license, you are permissible to generate this much of weight annually. So this is a very important compliance criteria which we need to assess on a regular basis. Now coming back to the solid waste generation. So we have wet waste and dry waste. The correct segregation of dry and wet general waste at source is very important to utilize the biodegradable waste and reduce the quantity of waste disposal with less human intervention. Now, this is the screenshot of Mumbai Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai, where the guidelines are mentioned of solid waste management department. Right? So in various cities, municipal bodies have stopped the pickup of solid biodegradable wet waste. And the same is applicable to us as far as we are the commercial establishment, be it hotel or be it the hospitals. So respective state pollution control boards have included in consent to operate license mandatory installation of composters in the facility of waste generation. If the quantity of wet waste is generated beyond the compost machine processing capacity, then tie up with authorized private vendors approved by respective municipal body who will collect the wet waste and dispose of predefined cost. The compost machine generates manure which can be provided to agriculture purposes, but the supply chain connecting the hospitals is an issue, especially in metro cities. I have tried to find out many suppliers who can pick up such large quantity of compost manure every day or twice in a week, but we were not successful. The compost machines are the electricity guzzlers and a recurring cost for the hospitals. Now, the best thing what has happened in the recent past is I read this article in Economic Times. So many government hospitals and private hospitals beyond 200 beds generate tons of wet waste on daily basis. And below mentioned possibility will help in near future to generate electricity in campus of hospital with large area. And the self-reliance of hospitals in electricity generation can meet the public area lighting requirements and reduce the wet waste at source. I can see the questions and I will answer at the end of the presentation. So this is what the Tatas have done, and a Maharashtra-based company along with them. So they are creating a biogas plant wherein all the wet waste of a village will be calculated, collected, and they will create the biogas. And through that biogas, they will generate the electricity. And this is one such pilot testing of a microgrid level electricity production. If this is successful, then in the large institutions, say for example, medical colleges, government hospitals, who have huge lands, can help us in building such kind of a setup, and we can send the wet waste and create the biogas so that we can eliminate the entire waste and generate electricity, which is a clean energy and can utilize it for the hospitals. So such kind of setups will be feasible, practical in the near future, and much is happening at village levels. I'll come to the hazardous chemicals. So hazardous chemical waste such as waste xylene, waste formalin from histopathology lab, these are highly flammable material, waste transformer and diesel oil after transformer and diesel generator set maintenance, sludge from the STP plant and any other chemical waste. At first, the hospital needs to do the agreement with the hazardous chemical treatment vendor, which is licensed by Pollution Control Board. In my first slide, I have read the excerpts of the rules of 2016 in which the act was mentioned, the hazardous substance management. So under that, these vendors are licensed by Pollution Control Board. After having a valid agreement in place, send the sample of the hazardous chemical for disposal and a predefined quantity which will be informed by the vendor. A comprehensive analysis test will be done on the sample to determine the method of disposal, and the basis the method, the quantity of waste, the cost of treatment will be defined. The cost of treatment for a particular kind of a waste chemical is different. And then online manifest shall be filled and submitted, and 6 copies should be printed. 5 copies to be given to the certified transporter only, and 1 copy after acknowledgement shall be kept as a record for yourself. The details of the hazardous chemicals disposed in a year to be filed in the annual environment statement. We have to file the annual environment statement for the hospital for the last financial year before 30th September. It's a mandatory periodic cycle, and in that we have to mention all the hazardous chemicals which the hospital has disposed. By doing this, we comply with the management and disposal of the waste chemicals in the hospital. So this is how it looks, the comprehensive analysis report. It gives all the features of the waste, what is the type and all the specifics. And this is the manifest for hazardous and other waste, which is the screenshot of the online form submitted on the Pollution Control Board portal. Disposal of blood and body fluids. So examples are like acetic pleural fluid in bottles, HBsAg positive blood bags, urine of renal failure patients, and cord blood. So we have the licensed vendors, like we have Yashraj Biotechnologies. It's a pan-India institution, and they have a license to conduct the research and development activities and manufacturing of diagnostic proteins, antigens, and diagnostic kits. And they depute their people. Their people will come with the particular collection bags or bottles. They collect these fluids from the hospital, and then they utilize it for their consumptions. It's a license through the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board, valid for a period. So as per the validity of their license, the hospital can enter into an agreement wherein the entire expense of the waste disposal is borne by this agency. By doing this, we eliminate the entire chances of disposal of such body fluids into the sewage drains, and these are treated separately, and we reduce the hazard to the environment. Electronic waste such as ARV equipments, or if the PCPNDT equipment. So after filing the application with the government and after approval of decommissioning, or after the approval from the respective PCPNDT authorities of the equipments, or for computer, printer, any other electronic gadget or equipment or medical device, we can submit our applications to the licensed e-waste vendor who is authorized by Pollution Control Board, and they will dispose or discard these medical devices. We do not give to any scrap dealers or exchange the value of the scrap, and adherence to these disposal methodologies are very strict, which will help us to maintain the correct disposal of electronic equipments. So by this, I end on the biomedical waste and the other waste disposals which we do in hospitals. I'll answer the questions first. So the question of Natasha is, the barcoding is usually done at the central BMW area wherein guidelines state at the source of generation. That means it's done at all the nursing stations. Please clarify. So we cannot generate the barcode label at all the nursing stations in the hospital because practically, operationally, this is not feasible. So what we do, a manual sticker is generated at the source in the ward at the dustbin level, and the person or the housekeeping person or the supervisor who is monitoring that documents it with the ward name, the ward name and the color code, and stick onto it. And then that bag is carried to the central station where there is a digital weighing machine and the barcode software, and at the single place only the barcode stickers are printed. Sanjay Srivastava is asking me that, are you using any app to monitor this waste generation and disposal? So we don't use an app. We have a software at a single location, and the MIS are configured. So I can generate the MIS month on month basis, waste category wise, the quantity of waste generated, date wise quantity of waste generated under various categories, and ward wise the quantity of waste generated. So that if I plot for a period of 12 months or 24 months or 6 months or date wise, I know that where the non-compliance is happening or people are not segregating correctly, and because of which the training is required and infection control is informed and the monitoring is increased. Sanjay is asking, are you getting any CHG savings contribution certificates? GHG. No, we are not getting any GHG saving contribution certificates. Is there any separate STP required for laboratory waste? No, we have a common STP and all the STP lines are connected to the main STP plant. So all the disposable lines goes towards the STP plant, that water is treated, and after that the treated water readings are sent to the pollution control board office, where the software monitors the quality of the water, and after that at the outlet terminal it is disposed into the municipal sewage lines. Can the app not be used department-wise for easier ownership? Just a suggestion. No, it's a statutory compliance. Because the monitoring of the reading and the quantity of the waste is the utmost thing, and a correct barcode labeling is the compliance. So that is why to eliminate the repetitive entries, because we cannot change the values in the software of the waste once it is recorded. So that is why it is put onto the machine at the central place and it is reflected in the software. It's a non-editable thing. We use the app for biomedical waste training. So AIMS Delhi has developed an app in English and Hindi, and which we have asked all our sanitation workers to download. And it's a very good pictorial app which they refer to for their trainings and awareness. Should I move to the radioactive waste management presentation? If there are no questions on this presentation.
Mr. Jaiswal, I think there are a few questions left in the chat box, if you could see.
I have answered all, because I have opened the question answer.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think there
are total 5 of them.
So Mr. Jaiswal, I think you've answered the questions that were in the Q&A, but there are questions that have been posted in the chat option also. Are you able to read those? Or Ananya can maybe read them?
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
So I think the first question was by Sanjay Shiva.
I have joined. Are you using any app to monitor this waste generation and disposal? So I have answered this, that we use the software, and through the software we generate our monthly reports, trends of 2 years, and we compare the waste generated in various categories with the number of surgeries we are doing, the number of inpatients which are getting admitted. And say, for example, from last year, we will compare it with the COVID admissions, in which case the yellow category waste has gone beyond the permissible limits. So that is how we evaluate that if the workload of a particular mix is increasing, then the waste is increasing or decreasing. If there is any difference in these 3-4 criteria, then we intervene into the audits with respect to the correct segregation at source. So Shamla is asking me, if you have small amount of wet kitchen solid waste can be composted naturally without electricity input. Just require small amount of bacterial inoculum once in 2 weeks is what is required, and simple constructed pits with grilled doors on the top. I couldn't understand, how do you disinfect liquid waste like lavage, blood, spinal fluid? Liquid waste with high organic content with inactive sodium. So to answer your questions, number one, small quantity of wet kitchen solid waste, such kind of composters are installed with vermipost in the societies, in the residential societies. Such kind of such kind of compost are also implemented in a couple of army colleges in Bangalore, army hospitals, defense hospitals, where they have huge amount of land. In private hospitals, we don't have that amount of land. So that is why the composter equipment has to be installed. Apart from that, disinfect liquid waste like lavage, blood, spinal fluid. So we don't disinfect. The vendor collects it and they take away and they use it for their productions of diagnostic kits and the other reagents or proteins. Liquid waste with high organic content will inactivate sodium hydrochloride. I do not know about this because we don't do this and we don't practice. Another thing is, what is the process of treating plastic waste generated from red waste bin? What happens after autoclaving the waste? So the plastic waste and the tubings after autoclaving condense into the plastic in a very small quantity. So that is why weighing before autoclaving does not serve the purpose, because it will shrink into very small volumes of balls and the labeling will also goes off. So once we process it, autoclave it, after that we weigh it, and then we put the sticker that from which ward it has come, and we put it into the counting with the bags, and we put the uh, cloth onto it so that we remember that which ward it was, and basis which we generate the barcodes and paste onto it after that. Which waste category has seen the highest increase during COVID-19? So it's obvious, yellow category. Also, are there any existing environmental audits conducted in the hospital? So environmental audit, we have gone through the Kayakalp audits, which was conducted last year. And those are the only audits apart from our internal infection control audit and quarterly MPCB pollution control board audit, wherein they audit us basis the conditions which are predefined, which are very specific in the license which is given to the hospital. So if you see the conditions or the license to consent, then air, water, and the biomedical waste. Against all conditions, the hospital deposit the bank guarantees in lakhs of rupees. And if we don't comply, then the MPCB will forfeit those bank guarantees. So that means it becomes highly important for us not to miss a single compliance. From Shamla, I'm having a question that, but CPCB has made it mandatory for healthcare facilities to use their BMW app. I do not know about this because there are two systems. We generate through our software and we give those stickers and barcodes to the central biomedical waste treatment facility transporter, and they collect it and they certify the weigh, because we weigh in front of them only. If there is any such thing, I will cross check again with them. Purnima. Oh, so in your list of statutory compliance, 13 were listed. Is there no requirement for personal protection of waste management workers? I mean, that is obvious under the healthcare safety guidelines. So I have not touched upon the needle stick injuries and the occupational safety in this segment. But that is basis, and nowadays after the COVID, it has break the shackles of past 20 years, wherein we used to run behind the people to wear the mask and the gloves and the gumboots while handling the biomedical waste. Now they themselves ask that if these things are not provided, we will not work. So that's a disguise in blessings and 100% compliance we see at the ground staff also. As far as under the e-waste rules, I think there is something that refers to extended producer responsibility. And is that really followed for e-waste like computers? I feel that can be more easily followed for medical equipment at the end of the life cycle. I am not aware about the extended producer responsibility, but as a user, we hand over to the e-waste vendors and they condemn it. Even the lead aprons, we don't give it to any scrap dealer who can tear the cloth and use the leads. We give it to the certified vendor for a proper disposal. What happens red waste after disinfection? After autoclave, we weigh it and we give it to the transporter to carry it and dispose it into the central facility. Purnima, I believe I have answered all the questions in the chat box also.
Yes, sir. I think all the question and answers are done. So since we are done with all our question and answers, we can move forward with our agenda. And now I would like to call upon Dr. Purnima Prabhakaran to share some reflections and her experiences about climate smart healthcare system. Dr. Purnima is the Deputy Director, Center for Environmental Health, PHFI, and she is the Head of Project Activities under HELP. She is also the nodal person for activities that have been taken up at the Center for Environmental Health as one of the centers of excellence for green and climate smart green and climate resilient healthcare under Ministry of Health, Family and Welfare. Over to you, Dr. Purnima.
Thank you, Ananya. And thank you, Mr. Jaiswal, for that very interesting presentation. I think you covered the entire gamut of waste management in any healthcare facility. So it was a good learning opportunity for all the attendees, I'm sure. So Ananya's request was to just share some reflections on this concept of climate smart healthcare. And which is why we actually already also started this series, this webinar series called Climate Smart Healthcare Webinar Series. And waste management is a very important component of that concept. So just to step back on what this is actually, I think we have been talking repeatedly about this climate smart concept, but what it really is for somebody who's hearing it for the first time, is it actually relates to how the health sector has to adapt itself to the health impacts of climate change. So within this concept of climate smart, we have two components. One is the adaptation and resilience component, which really means that we improve our health infrastructure to handle the increased disease burden on the one side, which means increasing awareness as well of healthcare professionals on the various impacts, the health impacts, and what increased disease burden that their healthcare facilities will see as a result of climate change events. Acute climatic events could range anywhere from floods, droughts, heat waves, air pollution itself. So all the increased disease burden that will come with these acute climatic events, that is the one form of adaptation that we want to equip our healthcare professionals with. But also it is about healthcare infrastructure itself. Like the statement goes, that the health facility should be the last building standing in the event of acute climatic event. And most recently, we saw what happened in Uttarakhand. And I was at a health ministry meeting a couple of hours ago where they were saying that many healthcare facilities were washed away. So, it's also about structural resilience of our healthcare facilities. And it's a tall order to work up to, but we are increasingly working towards that, not just through the National Program of Climate Change and Health under the Ministry of Health, but also working to handhold the states to work with their health infrastructure, starting from state government hospitals to district and community health centers, as well as down to the primary health centers and the health and wellness centers, which are the sub-centers at the at the lowest level of healthcare within India. So that component of climate adaptation and resilience is one piece that we have started working with in the national program. And we have different verticals in that. Besides the building itself, making the building and the structure resilient, we are also talking about things like resource efficiency, like energy efficient healthcare operations, resource efficiency with respect to water as well, how we use water within the healthcare facilities, but also things like waste management, because it is such an important part and it has its own emission component. So waste management is not just, like we learned in today's webinar, it's not just the biomedical waste management. In your healthcare facilities, there are all the different components of waste, like the solid waste, the e-waste. And I think this was a really insightful learning for the attendees today, that the whole waste component vertical of a climate smart hospital is a really important piece. And I think you need a whole team to address all of this, the different statutory compliances and regulations. The actual biomedical waste management rules is not the only thing. There's also the solid waste, the chemical waste, and the e-waste. the other part is the emissions itself. And that is the other component of being climate smart, which is the mitigation. So you reduce the emissions that come out of a healthcare facility. And again, emissions can come from very many components: the actual running of the healthcare facility, the lighting, the cooling, the heating, all of that has emissions. And we are talking to healthcare facilities through this program to actually address all of that, to move to clean energy, to better modes of lighting and heating and cooling, but also in terms of the waste management. So do the most efficient management strategies that are possible to reduce your climate footprint. So I think the mitigation component is also important. So we work, as many of you know, as HELP members, we work with this international organization called Healthcare Without Harm. And with them and their global green and healthy hospitals, we, through our network, are trying to advance the agenda for climate smart healthcare. And a big part of this is about the mitigation of our footprint. As one of their recent reports has shown, that healthcare facilities around the world, if we are all put together, we contribute about 5% of greenhouse gas emissions to the world. So, it's like a big component. It sounds like a small number, but if we think of all the healthcare facilities in India as well, there's a lot of work to be done. So we're really grateful for all the membership that we have in India from this network of HELP, through our HELP platform. And besides the waste management, we are talking to you about very many other components as well. And we look to you, to your support, because ground implementation is what we have to do through you. We can be like the knowledge partners and advocate for it, but actual implementation of the ground is on the ground is only through your partnership. So thank you very much, Mr. Jaiswal. It's really refreshing to hear about all the initiatives that you have at your healthcare facilities. There are very tools and resources that are going to be rolled out in this year through our partnership with Healthcare Without Harm. There's a healthcare climate challenge that we are talking about, and we are looking at a sustainable procurement of healthcare goods and all the consumables that you use in the hospital. So there are various tools and resources that we will be sharing with you in the coming months through our network. And we really look forward to your support, as well as all the other members who are here today. Please spread the word, and we'll continue to engage with you through this very active team of colleagues that I have at the Secretariat, who are hosting these webinars at regular intervals to increase the awareness. So Ms. Ananya Tiwari, who is hosting the webinar today, Mazroor, who's actually doing all the legwork to do the communications with you all through our regular newsletters. I hope you all are following what we are sharing through those networks as well. And we have Sanya Prakash, Dr. Ishika Jaria, who's looking after the sustainable procurement work as well. So they're all working hard with me to advance the agenda for India and move the needle in this sector for climate smart healthcare. So we can only do it with all your support. So looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ananya, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Poornima. Thank you so much for sharing your reflection and summing up all the work and all the important aspects of this theme. And with this, we are now at the end of today's session. And I would like to thank Dr. Poornima for her kind guidance while we organize this webinar. I'm really thankful to my team members, all my team members, Masroor, Ishika, Sanya, who helped us put this event together. And we look forward to connecting with you all in our future webinar series. And thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening ahead.
Thank you.